Hello everyone, and welcome back to the New Hampshire Business Show. My name is Chris Pastrana, and today we're here with Nate Lambert of Spitfire Firearms Training. How's it going?
Not bad. How are you?
Doing well. So let's get started. Tell me about yourself and the business and where it all started and all the fun stuff.
Sure. My dad was a police officer for 19 years, and I've always been immensely proud of him. He was really exemplified the concept of protecting and serving people. He would be the type of guy where he'd arrest somebody for drugs or something, and they would turn to him and say, I don't even know what day it is. But they knew that they could trust him because even though he'd arrested them, he was going to treat them fairly. So It's kind of an amazing thing out there. There's a lot of good officers out there, but he really exemplified what I would consider was the finest example of being a police officer. So I always enjoyed shooting. It was kind of a hobby thing. I bought my first gun when I was 21. And it was about when I was in my late 20s, 26, 27, that I just did an inventory of how many women especially who had been in bad situations, situations that severely impacted their life. In the short term, negatively, a lot of them have been able to find that as a source of strength and heal from that and even grow out of it, to a point where they have new strengths. But I just realized that if there was a tool out there that was effective for helping them protect themselves, we tend to think of women in that regard, but men too. We really enjoy the concept of protecting our families and being kind of tough and all that. I mean, you ask most guys, they want to act tough. But the reality is that most tools out there for self-defense are stopgap solutions, pepper spray. There's some self-defense. There's something called the ASP, which is a little baton that folds up like to 6-inch length, and you whip it out, and it kind of extends to like 1.5 feet. And all those types of things require a level of training and are kind of stopgap. They're kind of in the middle. They're not really going to avail, somebody in their 70s or 80s the way a firearm could. So firearms, obviously you have to understand the limitations of firearms and not the legal obligations you have for them, but I really feel passionate about providing the service to train people to understand how to use them and how to employ them. Struck it up with my one of my business contacts on the carpentry side, contracting side, who was going to head to New Mexico with her daughter for a week-long training seminar, covering everything from muzzle loaders and black powder, archery, right up to automatic firearms. And she was really excited about it. It was her daughter's idea, and when she came back, she was just on fire. She had had so much fun. She didn't realize how much fun this could be, in addition to providing valuable service. Some folks, love golfing. Some folks, they love, football. Some folks love shooting just as a recreational hobby. And I certainly fall into that category as well as my business partner. And we've just been, over the past 4 years or so, really buckling down and committing to getting better and better education in regards to firearms so that we don't just know the basics of safe gun handling, the ABCs, and some of the basic defensive stuff like how to work out of a holster, but we've really pursued trying to get an even exposure from all types of different instructors on all of the intricacies of deploying a firearm, transitioning to other targets, and even using rifles sometimes. And, we get to have a lot of fun rubbing elbows with some Green Berets and Navy SEALs and FBI SWAT guys and all these different. I'm sure they have their own classifications for they have real names, but that's basically who we work with sometimes, and it's a ton of fun and working with really cool people. During our continuing education. So
absolutely. So
So
that's pretty cool. Now, I didn't hear you if you said it or not, but you were in the military?
I was never in the military. I was thinking about joining, but I never wanted to lie about my asthma. And, integrity is one of the things that, you're supposed to have going into the military. So I was like, I'm not, I'd rather exemplify that. And one of the recruiters I went to, he was like, wow, I'm really glad that that should serve you well in life. And I kind of wish you would join, but, I understand you don't want to lie.
Yeah.
So Yep, and the police never appealed to me because, man, they work some hard shifts, especially if you're in a bigger town.
Yeah.
You're going to be pulling a lot of 12-hour night shifts, and that's hard on your health. So, I think that most people, regardless of their background, can have a strength. Normally you'd expect somebody in firearms to either come out of military police, and a lot of them are. A lot of firearms instructors are. But I think coming from the civilian side does give us some benefit. The fact that we are trying to provide a training environment that is as fun as possible while still having, hardline objectives. Every time for the first year or two I would go down for training, knowing the caliber of people I was working with, I would get knots in my stomach. I mean, I just... all kinds of thoughts running through my head, like, I don't want to look like a total dweeb, I don't want to let anybody down, just silly stuff like that. But, I would get huge knots in my stomach because of the types of people we were working with. They're really top of the line, as they say, tier 1 professionals, people that had been in Iraq or Afghanistan knocking down doors for years were training us. And it's kind of intimidating. So the goal for Spitfire is to, we have a couple things going at once, but our biggest goal is to be as non-intimidating as possible and reach as many folks as possible, even people that don't agree with us necessarily about the scope of firearms ownership that we would advocate for. We still believe that they have the right to defend themselves, and they may find themselves at a time thinking maybe a pistol's right for me, and we definitely want to work with them and don't want to stoke any political flames if possible, and just help people, like I said, in as non-intimidating an environment as possible, having fun, but still teaching, objectively the necessities of safety that firearms entail.
Yeah, and that's actually a very interesting point, because politically, I won't get too much into it, but very hot topic.
Oh, yeah. Especially on the border with Vermont right now.
I was about to say that too. Because this is a very interesting place, especially as, I'm sure not everyone in Vermont is super crazy, but, there's a very... liberal perspective of firearms that they're all bad. No one should have them. No one should use them.
Yeah, all the topics that I've dealt with. I've not been involved in debate or anything, but I've delved into it a little bit and realized that there's always the hard left, hard right, whatever, and there's a centrist group, and it seems to be in both those cases the extreme edges of those groups that kind of push things along, and the people in the middle kind of, they don't want to rock the boat too much, and so things kind of move along, not because of the majority, but usually because of a vocal minority.
Yeah.
And, whatever disagreements I might have, I think at the end of the day, I believe that people have the right to defend themselves. There will always be bad people. We don't like to say that, but there always will be groups of people, not necessarily working together, but folks that hurt other people for whatever reason. And I'm not here to talk about psychology or anything, but, or whether that's them being wicked or psychologically off kilter or whatever. But there is no evidence that we're ever going to erase that in humanity.
No.
And I want everyone who has the desire to be able to get the training to keep themselves and their loved ones safe.
Yeah.
And so, if you choose a revolver because you think people shouldn't have any more than 5 rounds in your gun, then we'll help you train. But personally, I think the more rounds you have at your disposal, the better, to be quite honest with you.
I would agree with you.
Yep.
So without getting too political, let's move into the type of training, because this is one of the arguments I get all the time about my stance on gun ownership, which is very, very strong for pro.
Yep.
Like, very strong.
Yeah, my political, I agree politically, that is my leaning as well.
Yeah.
We already prohibit grenade launchers, and, automatic firearms are difficult to get, and, the reality is, if you don't believe in tyrants, just wait 5 years, because, when your political party loses, you're kind of nervous, and tyranny has existed all throughout history, and, eventually those people in power need to realize that they have an obligation to safeguard the people underneath them, and if you get to the point where your view of that is that you'll send police door to door hurting people to protect them, Soviet Russia did that, to lesser extent, states in the Far East, Cambodia, Vietnam, China, and
Venezuela.
Venezuela's having a hard time. Yeah, I mean, they're having a hard time right now. So the state has the ability to exercise force right now. Every state, every government does that, and the government should not be the exclusive owners of that. The people should possess the means to be able to resist a government that might become skewed. And there's all kinds of different, throughout history. I mean, communism's a new development to history. Socialism is too. Fascism, but they all carry more or less the same belief that they are the only ones that should have power. They know better than the people. And a huge debate that I had, and this is kind of getting a little off topic, but between communism and fascism, there are differences between the two, but ultimately the people at the top are murderers, and they want all the power for themselves, and that's So
and I always think it's funny because we're definitely getting off topic here, but for as much as everyone hates Nazis, like they really let communists slide on this. And I'm like, man, between Stalin, Mao, and they killed way more people than Hitler ever.
Hitler had a plan to liquidate 90% of the Russian population, so if he had won, he would have surpassed them all, but fortunately he didn't. The types of training that we focus on, and again, being the non-intimidating, and partly because to get more certifications, we need more and more hours of training in order to attain those. And I'll be going down for a patrol rifle instructor certification this year, which will allow me to teach basically a 101 through a 104 curriculum with rifle, which is up to the point where you're kind of moving around vehicles and understanding how to move as a team, just the real fundamentals of that. So that's the kind of certificate I'm after. But with pistols right now, which is certainly what most people are going to want to work with, dealing with a rifle, it's cumbersome in certain ways. I mean, it gives you a lot more capabilities, but it's more cumbersome in certain ways. Obviously, it's harder to walk around with a rifle. You really look like a weirdo.
Yes.
And to be quite honest, the reality is the only time that you'd be deploying that would be either, really in the woods, maybe home defense, or if literally the government collapsed, So I don't view that as a particularly likely scenario. I really enjoy using rifles, but most folks are in the pistol side of things. And what we're pursuing right now is more or less two separate classes, your 101 class and your 102 class. In the 101 class, you're looking at taking people that may have never had a gun, held a gun in their lives, and teaching them what we would call baseline rules of safety. Sometimes we call them fundamental rules. The way the NRA teaches, and a lot of other organizations teach beginners, is with one set, and then as folks mature, I mean, it's just a normal learning process that you mature and you develop maturity in safe weapons handling, that we kind of start explaining why those rules are the way they are and how sometimes you can bend them. You shouldn't break them, but redefining the term, like one of the terms is you keep your firearm unloaded until it's ready to use. Well, what that means for an experienced gun owner is that I'm going to put my firearm in my holster today and carry it around. Well, at that point, it's usually loaded.
Yeah, so, and a lot of people carry with at least one in the chamber, too.
And I mean, some people, if I've got my boy over my shoulder and I've got a shoulder holster on, I'm not carrying chambered. And I've talked to a couple experienced guys about this, and they're like, oh, I totally understand. And some people have their strong opinion that the gun will never go off. And I'm like, I get that, but it's just weird. So if whatever your conviction on that particular item is, train to the way you carry. So. But the 101 class, like I said, we're really focusing on that safety bit. And really, one of the big things I've had a lot of experience, or I should say one of the things I've heard a lot from women, guys, of course, think they can handle anything pretty much, until you put it in their hands, and then reality sets in. But women tend to be more sensible about this, and because of that, they think, well, I want a smaller gun that's easier to handle. And a 22 long rifle, which is one of the smallest calibers you can get, the round is the smallest. They think that they should stick with that, and we want to demonstrate to them what that round's capable of doing, and also why they can go with something much larger. So we frequently start our students out with a 22 long rifle. The cartridge is called long rifle, even though it's frequently put in pistols. We'll start them out with a revolver, a very heavy revolver, and put a string of that, 5-6 rounds through that revolver for them. Them shooting, and almost immediately, so long as they were safe, we'll show them how, as a grown man, I can shoot a 9mm pistol, gripping it upside down and actuating it with my pinky, shooting it with my pinky. Say, if it's not going to jump out of my hand, I can put groupings on the target, put a couple rounds through it. I can put rounds down on that target. The gun is not going to jump out of my hands. You certainly can have a conventional grip on this same firearm. And of course, it has more energy. But it's like the difference between somebody giving you kind of a limp handshake and somebody giving you a firm handshake. It's not going to break your hand.
Yeah, and this is usually the argument, not argument, but actually it is an argument with me and my wife. What she wants, is it a 308? It's a much
380.
380. Thank you. So the 380, which she's like, I like it. It's small, and I'm like, but it's really snappy. Yeah, and it's got a lot of torque on your wrist and stuff. Yeah. Where in comparison, a 9mm is nice.
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing to think about when you're looking at cartridges and frame size. Those are the two things that are going to determine how much energy you feel. So a 22 long rifle feels really light, regardless of the frame you put it in, because it's so small. The problem with that round is not only is it not deliver much energy on the target, which means you're not going to be able to stop a potential threat.
Yeah.
The other disadvantage is that there's so little energy in the round itself that it normally can't cycle the slide in a normal pistol. So a semi-automatic, the one where the slide cycles on the top, as opposed to a revolver, that's not dependent on the amount of energy in the round. That's a mechanical function of metal and springs and all that. And some gun guy out there is going to probably correct me on that one. But anyway, the point being is that it's metal, it's levers, it's just the way the gun works. Yeah. It has nothing to do with how much energy the cartridge is producing. So you throw that same cartridge into a semi-automatic pistol, and frequently that round is not going to have the energy to cycle, especially as that gun gets dirty.
Yeah.
That round is going to foul. So you go up through calibers, and there's so many it's dizzying. I have a hard time keeping track of all the different calibers and types of rounds there are out there. But you get up into the 357 Magnums, which is a narrower round but has a lot more power. 38 specials, 38s, 380s, or all 9s are all basically the same diameter around. And the 380 is an attractive cartridge because it's a little bit smaller. You'd think you could get a few more rounds in the gun. That can be true. It's not necessarily true. But you also think because it has less energy that it's going to be more pleasant to shoot. And the problem with a 380 is that it's moving pretty slow. It's one of those automatic cartridges that I think like Browning invented some automatic, like the 32 ACP or the 32 automatic, the 380 automatic, and the 45 auto. And those rounds all move fairly slow, to my knowledge. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the fundamental concept is that defensively, if you want to use a 380, you're usually using it in a plus P, which means I don't know if they've altered the way the powder's mixed or if they've just put more powder in there, but it produces the round to higher velocities when it comes out the barrel. And now you've put something that's moving just as fast as the 9 into generally a smaller frame at that point. So, and again, polymer frames, size of frame, I said size of frame earlier, but it's really the mass. It's the total mass. So it's the size and the weight of the frame and the energy coming out of the cartridge. So I really like 9mm. It's one of the cheapest rounds on the market, so you can get more practice in with it than, say, with a 45. 45 is a decent round, but you're going to be paying at times twice as much for a 45 round. The market fluctuates, but there was a time when I was paying 22 cents a round for a 9 and 44 cents for a 45. So you can guess I would get a lot more training into the 9mm if I had a budget. Yeah. So, but they do make a number of 9mm firearms out there that have a fairly small grip surface. I have large-ish hands for a guy, not super large. I bet your hands are bigger than mine. No, I would think so. So that has something to do with your firearms choice also, that if it's a bigger grip, larger firearm is generally going to interface with you better. Not an unbreakable rule, but a general rule of thumb. Yeah. And you don't obviously want a boat anchor hanging off of you, but if you're looking at a firearm choice, you should be looking for something that you can practice with, that you enjoy practicing with, that you would also carry. Yeah. And you generally want to carry, and again, general rule, carry the largest firearm that works well with your hand, but you can still conceal. Yeah. And you're going to find a lot of offerings in 9mm with that rule of thumb.
Yeah.
And you may find that maybe you prefer a slightly smaller or slightly larger than would be normal. But there are a ton of firearms out there, 9mm, that even our small concealable handle well have a decent amount of rounds in the magazine. And I really prefer that round for all those reasons.
Yeah.
So, and ballistically, I mean, you talk to guys and they think this round or that round performs better. 9mm delivers energy on target as well as you'd ever want.
Yeah.
The only rounds that are really substantively better are going to produce so much energy that they're going to make it harder to shoot.
Yeah.
So, and I've never fired 10mm, but some guys I've talked to say it produces more energy in the gun and it really jumps. Or 50 caliber, like a Desert Eagle.
So much fun.
I'm sure it's fun, but it's not something you want to practice with for defensive or carry around on you.
No,
So,
that would just hurt all of it. If you were practicing
Yep.
with like a good 50 all the time, oh man, you'd just be sore. And
And so, again, going back to our class types, our 101, 102, our 101 focuses on that stuff, safety. These firearms, these 9s, are a pretty good fit for most people, and we'll sample some firearms to students to show them, what would fit their hand size, and we'll try to get them through something that seems really boring called, I think the NRA handbook calls it the cycle of fire, and it's basically everything the shooter should do, gripping the gun, sight alignment, sight picture, hold control, trigger control, breath control, and follow through. And I'm sure I messed up the order a little bit because the syllabus wasn't sitting in front of me. But essentially, if you do all those things and you understand the limitations of them, like hold control, if you point at an object and watch how much your hand moves. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And accepting that and working with it rather than fighting it will actually help you produce better shots.
Yeah.
But that is a subject that is really boring to most people because it sounds like you're just droning on for a while.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you understand that stuff, you're going to get good mechanics for shooting. And as you go down the line, talking to some of our instructors who are, tier 1 operators, one of their things that they'll frequently say to the students on the line was it your sights or your trigger? Meaning, did you mess up aligning your sights? Did you mess up aligning your finger?
Yeah.
Or having the trigger control. And so those basics, that cycle of fire, those are the fundamental building blocks off of which you build almost all of your shooting. There's some things called reflexive shooting where at extreme close ranges, you may not even pick up your sights at all. If you know the situation you're in, you can actually take shots without aiming in a traditional sense. You're still aiming, you know where your rounds are going to wind up, but that takes a lot of training and practice.
Yeah.
And a lot of police officers, and I can attest to this because I did scenario training this past weekend, that when you're zeroed in on a target, when you identify something as, okay, they have a knife and they're about to stab my friend, in this pretend world that we were in, my brain recognized the sights and then immediately, that's all I remember. I don't actually remember seeing the 3 dots that were on the front of my pistol.
Yeah.
Those 3 dots didn't exist realistically. I was focused on my target and I took care of what I needed to take care of. So those are non-orthodox things that would apply in very specific situations.
Yeah.
But our 102 classes, we mostly focus on working out of the holster. We have these safety things that we worked on before. Now we have to apply those to actually working out of a holster. And that's kind of the training wheels thing, because you may carry, some women will carry in a purse. There's things like corset holsters. There's, some more expensive things that maybe you might wear under a nice dress. There's certain holsters we tend to encourage you to avoid, like the flashbang. If you want to Google that, you'll see what that is. But you may wear an ankle holster, and so normally in a 102 class, and a lot of the classes that people work through, they're not working out of the holster that they would carry with.
Yeah.
But it helps to get them into the mindset of what does a good draw look like? How do I do this safely without injuring myself? How do I reholster without hurting myself? All those fundamentals are worked on, and then normally we encourage people that, exercising this exceptional level of safety, making sure that, when you train, because a lot of training is done dry, you get rid of all your ammunition and you train at home. And again, you've got to understand what that means. You've got to know how to do it. You've got to make sure that you're utterly safe, because most homes there's other human beings around, so messing up there without having formal instruction on how to do that could lead to a fatality. So I'll definitely preference that. But that's how most people get into a place where they're really taking all the things they've learned on a range day, and they're really moving the football down the field and really learning how to be a good weapons handler.
Yeah.
They would do that dry. And again, we would encourage people in those circumstances to work out of the holster they're going to carry.
Yeah.
Or if you carry a purse like a lot of women do, and they have a holster in that purse, realize the limitations of that and realize how to unzipper that dadgum thing and get your firearm out to defend yourself. So,
yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot there. Again, pretty close to our time limit.
Sure.
So people that want to reach out, learn more, maybe take some classes, how do they get a hold of you?
So I always forget my phone number, so you'll excuse me. I don't use it often. My other work number I've had for 15 years. So we are on Facebook. So if you look up Spitfire Firearms Training on Facebook, we should come up. We also have a website, which is spitfirearmstraining.com. And we also have a phone number that you can leave a voicemail at if we don't pick up. It's 802-266-0757. And you can leave a message on any of those platforms for Ellen or for Nate, and we will get back to you.
Okay, awesome. Yep. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time.
I love every chance I get to talk guns. That's it for today, everyone. But it doesn't have to end there. Head over to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or iHeartRadio to get more from New Hampshire's top entrepreneurs.